Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the 3000 days celebration coming up here on NA. This will be happening a little bit earlier than projected because of NA just having skewed dates compared to JP. And this is significant because the 3000 days celebration campaign is a pretty big milestone and has a lot going on with it. Now, for NA, we can expect this on September 10th. This is pretty much going to be our 3000 day point. So again, you guys can expect this probably at some point in the Wangina event with it already being active. So what can you guys expect from this campaign? Well, there are numerous things like login rewards where you'll get some quartz given to you. Again, just the actual 3000 days bonus that gives everybody 10 quartz. And then obviously certain things like teapots. So again, if you guys have been sitting on that to do like say Flare Olga or anything like that, this should give you guys a new amount of them. And then also things like your apples and your tickets. From there, there's also a limited time comeback login bonus for anybody that's returning to the game. Obviously, most of you guys, that won't be an issue, but there's also going to be two other major things here. But let's go over some of the minor stuff first. So there will be some missions that will be available to you guys during this event. And when I say event, sorry, it's a campaign, not a proper event. So it's just going to be something where you guys are going to want to make sure you're logging in and doing these missions. And again, you guys can see you're going to have missions basically to clear quests because there will be an SR Selector Ticket that we'll go over here in a minute. Doing those with the unit that you pull from that, leveling the unit up, getting them through their final ascension, and then also leveling up their skills and their bond, as well as using their noble phantasm, is what's going to get you all of these rewards. You will get a ton of nice stuff. There will also be other campaigns here for leveling the selected servant, as well as damage bonus on the servant. And you will also have Ember Gathering and Training Field quests all being open at the same time. Though, like I said, this will probably happen during the Wangina event for us, so we might not be able to take full advantage of it. And then, obviously, we're also going to have a summoning campaign alongside this. And this is significant because this is going to be the return of Castoria after a long sort of hiatus for her, as well as Morgan Le Fay. So obviously, there will be some really nice units on rate up. You guys, I highly recommend you consider rolling on both of these units for various reasons. They are both very strong units in their own right. They're both very capable, especially Castoria. She is one of, if not the game's most meta support. So it's a good idea to kind of keep your eye on when she's going to be getting banners. Even my new player account will be rolling this banner. So this is one that I've had my eye on for a while. There will also be some craft essences that are pretty decent here, including Apex, which is all attack scaling. And that one's pretty much going to be the one that you should actually focus on. Springtime Kodo Strings is okay, but it's split stats, so it's not one you'll necessarily want to level. And then Gloucester in 2018 is also at least a decent 4-star Star Bomb type of craft essence. So there are some decent things that you guys can get just from rolling in the manner. But the big thing you guys are going to want to be here for is the SR Selector. And so we're going to go through it all with you guys and try to give you the best idea that you can for what to expect. However, do keep in mind, this campaign might also get additional things. Currently, right now, Korea on their end just had a huge quality of life dump for new things getting added to them. They usually have it happen once a year, and it just happened for them. So it is possible that with the JP devs maybe dusting off the code to hand it over to Netmarble over there for Korea, that they maybe give us some as well here for something like the 3000 days celebration. And why would that be significant? Well, for starters, they had two major adjustments in that grouping that I think players would really like to know about. The first is the 100 spin on their FP, and the second is the adjustment to having pity apply to every single copy of a 5-star unit instead of just the first copy on a banner. So those two changes are pretty significant. They're really good quality of lives that I would hope that we could get early on NA, but we'll just have to see. Don't get your hopes up. If we get it, we get it. But at the end of the day, it's just something to be aware of that Korea did just get that sort of adjustment and change. Now, as we look at the SR ticket, the way this one's going to work is that this one will have certain limited and story locked units available in this one. That is a relative rarity. Normally, it's just normal units and story locked units. We don't get any limiteds. So this one will be significant because it'll be different from our normal SR tickets. Now, we don't get SR tickets very often anymore. We used to get them very frequently, but the devs have kind of dragged their feet on giving them out nowadays because there have been more things like SSR tickets and stuff like that. But basically, the requirement for this is just going to be that you clear Fuyuki. The special ticket will be sent to your present box once the exchange period is open, and the exchange is done in the Da Vinci Workshop. So you'll have to have gotten the ticket, and then basically you go into the Da Vinci Workshop for the selector. Now, basically what you're going to do is you're going to select the servant. They will join your roster temporarily, and they will be removed after basically, I think it's like about a 15-day, like 2-weekish grace period if the requirements for keeping the unit are not met. And the requirements are that you have to reach at least the first ascension stage for the unit and bond level 3 the unit in order to make them join permanently. That's not too big of a requirement, but some of you guys might need statues or something to get them through the ascension, so it is what it is. But again, it should be a really easy thing for most of you guys to actually manage to make these units permanent. Now, you can only pick one SR servant upon which the ticket is consumed afterward, and the exchange shop is closed. So it's not like you get to pick like one of each class or anything like that. This is just a single selection. So I'm going to do my best to kind of highlight, at least from each grouping, who I think is a good idea, who I think at least gameplay wise performs well and adequately and is worth your attention. And I will try to give you guys a little bit of a blurb about each one. So here we go. All right, starting off right here in the beginning, we have the Sabers. Now, Saber Alter is a story locked unit. She is the game's gold standard as far as AoE damage goes. So she's a very good unit for you guys to pick up with this ticket. And that is absolutely appropriate at this point because a lot of people probably need her for the additional MP levels or for the additional servant coins. Given the fact that she is a story locked unit, she is definitely high on people's priority list, both due to the desirability of the character in general, but also due to the gameplay performance that she now has. As again, even as a 4-star, Saber Alter is the strongest AoE Saber currently in the game. Next up, we have Nero, just the original version of her. She is also a story locked unit, so you will see a lot of people actually still try to pick her up, again, even just for collection copies, if not for coins. Story locked units are usually a decent option in that regard, and so you will see me mention them time and time again. But I will say again that she's kind of come a long way. She's both good as a challenge unit and as a decent farming unit nowadays, so she could definitely be a choice, but it's up to you to determine if you want to go after her. Sumanai, he's a permanent unit. I'm going to say for the majority of these, while Siegfried is a really good like AoE Saber, he's not someone you've got to have. He's just somebody that, again, a lot of people manage to stumble their way into and use him as their go-to Saber for a while. So he could be a good one. If you really like him, feel free to go after him. But to me, it's probably not who I would pick with the ticket. Chevalier de Eon, definitely not who I would pick with the ticket. You have numerous other tank options in FGO, and most of them are a lot more and better budget choices than maybe going after de Eon with the ticket. Rama is okay. He definitely has some competition with Watanabe, though he does get a little bit better in terms of performance in comparison to him. So the choice is yours. Again, he's a really, really good demonic killer in effect. But the issue that you'll have, again, is that he's permanent and doesn't really have any charge, so to speak. Lancelot Saber has finally had an NP interlude. His damage output is a whole lot better, but we do still have really good things. And this is something that you guys will have to consider a lot as we move through these, is your welfares that are available to you, as we are coming into an era of the game where the pilgrimage festivals are going to be pretty like constantly like coming now, and that will start giving you more and more and more welfare options. Lancelot Saber still a really good, like, high octane damaging saber, but he is not necessarily going to be somebody that you have to have anymore. And there is definitely a whole lot of like competitors for that kind of like single target slot now. Gawain, definitely, I'd say he's like middle of the road. He's gotten a lot of love to try to keep him relevant, but the problem that we have here is when it comes to 4 stars, Saber Alter is just that strong. So if you like the Potato Man, feel free to go for him. He is definitely one of the game's himbos and absolutely a fantastic character, but gameplay performance leaves a little bit to be desired. He doesn't have a whole lot of charge, though he can still provide the sun buff for himself and for other units like, say, Barcast, where maybe you would need somebody like him in order to provide it. Suzuka Gozen is okay. I think she's also a little bit of a clunky 4-star unit, could probably use some love in comparison to Salter at this point. So to me, if you really like the JK Fox, go for her. She's an AoE buster saber, just like Gawain before, and it's up to you if you want to actually go after her. But again, this is going to be one of these hard choices where we have to try and pick and choose who we actually want, and it's really just going to come down for a lot of people either to gameplay considerations, coin considerations, or again, just their favorite character. Fran Saber is our first limited on this list. She is a limited unit from Summer 2, and she is going to be coming to us here. She hasn't really gotten much in the way of upgrades over the years, so at this point, I feel like she could definitely be surpassed by a lot of welfares, but the choice is yours. She is a pretty decent single target quick saber that can loop due to the insane NP gain that she has. Yagyu has at least gotten some buffs. It's helped him, but frankly speaking, Yagyu's biggest issue is that he's kind of a one and done type of unit. His skill durations leave a little bit to be desired, so to me, while he is story locked, I wouldn't necessarily recommend picking him up here on this. And then we get another summer unit. So this is going to be another limited one here with basically Mabe Saber. Mabe Saber definitely has some issues with her debuffs on her NP needing to land. Nice shot. That's where a lot of her damage output's going to come from. It basically applies defense downs to the enemy, and it can, if you line everything up, do some pretty decent damage. But the fact of the matter remains that most other units don't have to do anything like that to get decent damage. So the choice is yours as to whether or not you want to go for Mabe. But again, she's a limited unit, so it does make her an intriguing option. Diarmid Saber is single target quick, but he is permanent. I don't really recommend him. I feel like Diarmid Saber could use a buff at this point, but we'll see if the devs do more with him in that regard. Len Ling is an interesting option. While he is a permanent one, he is a pseudo support here. He does have buff success chance in his kit. He also has arts up, and due to his more recent buff, he's actually a lot better now at not having to choose who he gives the buff success chance to, because he used to have to make a difficult choice between himself or some other target. Now he can just apply it to the entire party, which is really nice. Then we have Lakshmi. Lakshmi is an AoE quick saber. She is also another really intriguing one. She can loop now a lot better thanks to her upgrade giving her charge, but ultimately at the end of the day, a lot of people are still going to use her for her supportive capabilities, including her guts and her ability to target somebody with an invuln that can also heal. She also does have buff success chance built into her kit. Tomoe Saber has had at least a decent buff to help her out, but she is still no Muramasa. I really like girls with big crits, and Tomoe Saber will definitely do that for you. She still has one of the best summer designs in my opinion overall. She is a limited summer unit. She is an AoE art saber, so if you're looking for something like that, she can definitely get the job done. However, she is still very clunky to use, and the refund absolutely could be better. So again, choice is yours. Saito Hajime is a permanent unit. He is actually a pretty decent single target looping saber, and he did recently get a buff on JP. So his numbers are intriguing now due to that, and he has been shored up a little bit. He's never been a bad unit. He's always been pretty serviceable and pretty good. So in that regard, feel free to go after him if you want. He is basically the game's version of Virgil, and he is, again, a single target arts looping saber. Next up, we end up having basically Watanabe. Watanabe is, as we mentioned before, the competitor to Rama. Whereas Rama is anti-demonic, Watanabe is anti-demonic and anti-Oni. Definitely has a little bit more of a modernized kit. I like Watanabe a little bit better, but the choice is yours if you want to go after him. Next up here, we have Barghest. A lot of you guys are going to pick Barghest just because you really like her. That's perfectly fine. Barghest is still a really, really solid challenge unit. AoE damage, she leaves a little bit to be desired. So if you do pick her up and you've never used her before, do understand that the damage output might not be the best. But realistically speaking, she's still a pretty good unit. The big thing that she has issue with is that she deals more damage in Sunlight Battlefield, just like Gawain. However, unlike Gawain, she does not provide the Sunlight Battlefield for herself, so that is one of her weaknesses. Next up here, we have Roland. Roland is a permanent unit. He is a single target buster saber with 30% charge, and again, the ability to sort of buff strip his enemies. So it does make him a pretty intriguing choice if you're looking for a single target saber. Maybe you're pretty buster pilled, and that would make him a decent option for you here. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he's not someone that you gotta pick, and he might spook you at some point. Summer Gareth is another interesting one. She is also AoE buster. She also deals more damage when on Sunlight Battlefield, and she can provide the Sunlight Battlefield herself. That is her one advantage. Unfortunately, her damage output leaves a whole lot to be desired. They did Summer Gareth dirty. She absolutely could use a like Noble Phantasm interlude or something like that. Something to really buff her damage output. But we'll see. Maybe the devs will kind of revisit her at some point in the future. And then last but not least, we have Keisuke here. Keisuke is another intriguing option. He's basically a Shinsen Gumi support, though frankly speaking, I don't really recommend him too much unless you just really like the character, because Keisuke ends up having a little bit lackluster optimization and capability compared to maybe just using other more devoted supports. So at the end of the day, I think he's not somebody that you necessarily are going to want to pick with this ticket. Okay, next up we start the archers. So we start out with our good old red man here, Mr. Emiya. Emiya is an interesting one. He has definitely gotten a ton of upgrades over the years. His damage performance is okay, and he actually has some pretty insane looping capability now due to the adjustment to his third skill. The issue that you have is that he's actually kind of clunky with how that skill operates, so it doesn't result in a like completely fluid 3-turn most of the time, and there is some issues as to when the steroids actually can be activated for him in order to change up his damage output. So usually a lot of people will try to make Emiya take out like 2 of the waves instead of all 3, and they'll maybe have somebody else handle 1 of the waves for him. But he is an intriguing option, especially if you just like the Fate Stay Night cast. He's definitely somebody you guys can go for, even though he is permanent. He is both AoE buster and technically also AoE arts. And then next up here we have Atalanta Archer. Atalanta is still a really good quick looping AoE archer, and who knows, maybe quick is coming into a new era in and of itself now that we have Tiamat into the game. This will be an interesting one. Pairing alongside Tiamat could be interesting in the sense that she is definitely somebody that can crit and generate a ton of stars, but Tiamat comps don't usually have that sort of issue. So to me, the lack of charge is going to be kind of something that hurts her a little bit. I do think she's a really solid option as a looping AoE archer, but ultimately at the end of the day, she's entirely refund based, so you're going to have to be very careful with how you use her. Tristan is another story-locked single-target archer here. He is single-target quick. He's got 50% charge. And thanks to at least more recent upgrades, he at least kind of keeps pace with Balbon Sith some. Though, frankly speaking, I think Balbon Sith still has a little bit of the better kit. but we'll get to her when we get to her. So Tristan could be a decent option for your single target archer needs, but maybe not what I would pick necessarily with the ticket. Next up, we have the Yuri Pirate Archers. This is another limited unit. This is their summer version, and this version does have a gut skill. It's actually where they got the inspiration to fix the Rider version of them. And so for a while, the Archer version had been kind of the better option. The biggest issue that you have is that they are not very high in terms of damage output. So to me, I don't really necessarily recommend it unless you really like them. Next up here, we have Dimia Archer. Dimia is basically going to be your single target arts version of Dimia. He definitely still does decent like output in terms of raw damage. He also can drain enemies with his NP, similar to Squirtoria. The big issue that he has is his overall refund and lack of charge. His kit is still pretty like straightforward, so there's not a whole lot going on for him, but he can be a decent option for your single target archer category. Next up here is another summer unit. We have Helena Blavatsky Archer. She is AoE arch. She has party-wide charge, just like her caster form does, but the damage output leaves a lot to be desired, and her looping numbers are not great. Ironically enough, she can Black Grail loop, but unless you're a huge Helena fan, I really don't recommend it. Next up here, we have Tomoe Archer. Tomoe is single target buster. Just love the design still of Tomoe in general. Her damage output is still pretty stellar. She has had an NP interlude that has helped her out a little bit for a 4-star. The big issue you're going to have is that, again, she doesn't have charge, so you're going to have to kind of either work your way to an NP or just start her out with enough support to have the NP already. Next up here, we have Fujino, basically, and Fujino is a pretty decent single target buster archer. She does have challenge capability. She also is anti super large now thanks to her NP interlude, so her numbers are not bad. You can definitely go with her if you're looking for somebody that's going to be able to hold their own a little bit down the stretch of a fight, but ultimately at the end of the day, the choice is yours. Next up, we have Chiron. Chiron is a little bit more of a supportive archer as well. He at least has the ability to buff the party's crit damage. He also has a sort of tricolor steroid for people, but at the end of the day, I feel like one of his big claims to fame is that he actually basically can remove defensive buffs before damage goes out. So in that regard, it makes him very difficult to stop, but his damage output in and of itself is not altogether that strong. Next up, we have Hot Wheels, aka Ashvataman. Ashvataman is an interesting buster quick hybrid type of unit. He's also a 1 HP memer, as we like to call them, something that the Yuri Pirates also specialize in. Basically, Ashvataman will do more damage the less health that he has, and in that regard, he could be a pretty decent challenge unit. He could also be pretty decent at kind of just carting his way through stuff. He has pretty good crit damage in that regard. So again, choice is yours as to whether or not to go after him. Osaka Behime Archer is really like, yeah, she is the only unit in the game that can basically give an enemy a taunt. That has some occasional niche usefulness, but generally speaking, you're not going to care too much about that. The biggest issue that she's going to have is that her damage output is just not good. So to me, she's another one of the like limited summer units here that she could just use another pass by the devs, give her an upgrade. It would really help her out. But at the end of the day, the choice is yours as to whether or not you want some unique utility or you just really like her summer design. Next up, we have Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane's actually had another interesting buff as well, basically changing the way her third skill works. It does at least make it more of a consistent thing to pull off. It does make her a little bit more viable and have a little bit more situations that you guys can do. It's not going to be altogether that common of a thing. You're not going to see it happen too often, but I'm going to say at the end of the day, she could be a decent option for your single target archer needs. Just don't expect her to do the most NP damage. Next up here, we have Ilya Archer. Ilya Archer is another limited summer unit. She's AoE quick like Atalanta was, but unlike Atalanta, she's not entirely refund based. She actually does have charge in her kit. This would probably make her a better pairing alongside Tiamat Archer, though considering that, you know, having Tiamat Archer in there, they would be an entire Archer lineup. Just make sure you're going up against like Berserkers or Sabers or something like that. Don't try to take that into Lancers. It's not going to go well for you. And then next up here, we have Balbon Sith. Balbon Sith still just kind of one of the best overall kit-wise archers. And we definitely can see that she is single target quick, but she has the ability to NP seal enemies. She has the ability to basically skill seal them. She has drain. She has whatchamacallit, invuln for herself, so she is still a really solid unit that does quite a bit of damage. So I really do like her in that regard. Next up here, we have another limited summer unit with Anastasian V. This is basically going to be the equivalent to Kuro Archer, who we just got as a welfare. If you already picked up Kuro Archer, you definitely don't need Anastasian V, but if you really like Anastasia, she is a decent character and somebody that's going to do a lot for you here. And she does have 50% charge. So you can manage to at least kind of pop off with her still as a single target arts archer. But again, like I said, there is a lot of redundancy there with a welfare. So the choice is just up to you. Next up here, we have Zenobia Archer. She's going to be our last archer from this grouping. She is AoE arts. She is definitely a solid looper if you support her right. She does automate a good portion of her refund, basically due to her charge per turn skill. And she does at least get stronger with crits the more she loops through. So the choice is yours as to whether or not to go for her, but I think as far as looper AoE units go, she's probably the best unit to grab here from the archer category. Okay, so next up we have the Lancers, and we start out with Ellie Lancer. Now, Ellie is one of the game's just original Lancer groups. Basically, she is a permanent unit. She doesn't have charge in and of herself, but she does make up for that lack of charge as an AoE Buster Lancer by having utility. She has a defense down she can put on enemies, and she is sadistic charisma, which basically gives the entire party a charisma buff and then gives females an additional charisma buff. So it's a really useful utility. At times she can be used to just take out a wave and set somebody else up. Can definitely be a decent option to pick up if you don't already have her. Next up here, we have Lancer Alter, aka Lulter as I like to call her. But basically this is the alter form of Lartoria. Her 4-star variant here does not have as much charge in her as her 5-star form, but she at least has really good crit damage with her second skill and has had an upgrade to her charisma and still manages to have multi-turn duration on her main steroid, plus has 20% charge. So again, if you're looking for a decently hard-hitting AoE Lancer, she can definitely be a good option to pick up here. Plus she is story locked, plus a lot of people will be trying to get coins with her for things like the append unlock, if nothing else. Next up, we have Fion. Honestly, I hate to say it at this point, Fion is not a bad unit by any stretch of the imagination, but Fion's kit is still pretty clunky after all of these years. He's just not going to be my go-to recommendation for anyone to really pick up here. Next up, Li Shuin Lancer is a single target Arts Lancer. He at least has 100% crit damage. He has invuln pierce. He has really stellar card performance and pretty decent NP damage for a single target arts based Lancer. So I do really like him in that regard. He could definitely be a decent option to pick up. Kiyohime Lancer, we just got done praising basically Li Shuin. Unfortunately, Kyo Lancer, to me, not really that good. She could definitely use another upgrade. She did get one upgrade that at least helped her some, but she still just really lacks identity. They really need to give her some way to stand out from other options that, frankly speaking, are just better kitted. Next up here, Vlad the Third. Vlad the Third is actually a pretty decent tank. He also has the anti-evil niche. He is single target buster. So again, it's up to you if you want to go after him. He can actually be a pretty decent unit, but he is a permanent unit. So again, no necessarily pressing need. Next up here is Medusa Lancer. She is single target quick. She will definitely be a little bit more comparable to like Vlad and Li Shuin in terms of damage performance. But I do think where her real claim to fame is going to be both like charm and stun locking enemies. So basically just debilitating them and making them lose their turn while she's trying to operate. Next up, we have Minamoto no Raiko Lancer. This is the limited summer version of her. This is actually a pretty decent one to pick up for supportive purposes. If for no other reason than she hits hard on her own, but she also has a flexible kit in the same vein as someone like, say, Nero Bride would, where she can target the skills to help out either herself or an ally. So her middle skill is a 40% buster up for 3 turns that also has a debuff cleanse on it. So it can be really useful at times in terms of like raid events, in terms of just trying to super buff a unit for a couple of turns. That's one of the reasons I really, really like her. And I do think she is a very solid option for you guys to pick up with this ticket. Next up here, we have Parvati. Parvati did just recently get the fix to her 3rd skill on the JP server. That'll obviously be 2 years off for you guys here on NA, but she's still a really decent quick looping AoE Lancer. Again, refund is usually not the biggest issue with her. Instead, it's going to be, does she have enough damage output to actually kill what you need? Because a lot of her damage output's going to come on the turn that you end up popping her 2nd skill. So again, the choice is yours as to how to operate her and whether or not you want to pick her. She is a permanent unit. So again, up to you. Nezha here is, frankly speaking, not the best choice, I think. I think Nezha, while she has gotten at least a little bit of love, I do think that she kind of just pales in comparison to a lot of the better options, including like, say, for instance, Lalter here. I don't really see the point in picking up Nezha at this point in time, not unless the devs do something else with her, which is a real shame. She could be a very interesting unit if they would develop her a little bit more. Next up here, we have the Summer Valkyries. If there's anybody that needed it more than Parvati, it was probably the Summer Valkyries. They're kind of left behind at this point. I really like them. They're really cool characters. You get 3 different Valkyries basically for the price of 1. The problem that you're going to have with this is that their damage performance is not that good, and basically their actual like refundability is certainly going to be an issue at times. They do at least have the capability of automating some portion of it due to having charge per turn, but it's still not going to be a whole lot. And again, their overcharge mechanic on their NP leaves a whole lot to be desired. So it is what it is. I really like the Valks, but I don't think they're really worth the pickup at this point in time. Ibaraki Doji Lancer, to me, a little bit similar to Kiyohime. I actually think Ibaraki Doji is maybe a little bit more capable due to the crit centricity that exists within her kit. But ultimately, at the same time, we see just kind of another single target Buster Lancer. It doesn't really have a whole lot of identity. There's no real like reason to actually go to and use Ibaraki Doji Lancer. So to me, probably not the best pickup unless you're just a huge Banana Oni fan. Ken Liang Yu is another interesting one. She's a like sort of 4-star version of Hozoin. She basically does have a different kit than him. She does operate a little bit more with like healing and stuff, especially if you get crit. But I think at the end of the day, Ken Liang Yu could still use another pass by the devs. She could probably use some other upgrade to help her out. To me, I like her design. I think she's an intriguing unit. I'd like to see the devs do more with it, but I don't think this is a good time to pick her up at this point. Melt Lancer is another interesting one. She is AoE Arch. She has 60% charge, though she has to drain it from her allies in order to do so. And she can at least deal decent damage for the 1 turn that 3rd skill is popped on. However, just getting a single copy of Melt Lancer will not make her deal very good damage output. So if you're trying to shore up copies by getting like maybe a 4th or a 5th copy, she's definitely a decent pickup here. Or if you're just trying to go after coins, she's definitely a decent pickup. But I think just getting the first copy, it's probably not worth it. There maybe is a better option for you. So again, the choice is yours, but I do think Melt Lancer is somebody that at this point, she's aged well, but her damage output is the primary concern. Canis is basically very similar to Lalter. I really like Canis's character, but unfortunately, this kit also needs some sort of tuning. I don't feel like the devs have taken very good care of Canis, especially with how important she can be to the story at points. So at this point in time, my advice, even though she is story locked just like Lalter is, my advice would be if you're looking at this and you don't have any preference towards the character, just pick up Lalter instead. You'll get better performance output out of her. Next up here, we have Percival. Now, if you were looking for a looping option maybe, and somebody that you didn't want to like have to invest all too much in, Percival's a great option here. Percival actually can be your go-to AoE arts looper. I think he's my recommendation in that regard because he's just kind of a like easy to set up type of character, and his performance output is pretty consistent. You don't have to mess around with him too much. You basically can just kind of set him in, support him, and go, and he will work fine. Next up here, we have Don Quixote, the Windmill Knight. Don Quixote's single target quick, but what makes him interesting is that he's anti-giant, and he has the ability to transfer his charge to other allies. So it is almost a reverse Parvati situation in that regard, or a reverse Melt Lancer situation in that regard. I do find it really interesting. I think Don Quixote can be a sort of like dark horse candidate to pick up here because of the fact that he can be a decent Lancer supporting unit, especially as a 4-star. But ultimately, the choice is yours. You definitely need to try to get him on something like this, though, because he is story locked, and you may not like other pairings of units with him. So again, it's up to you as to who to pick here. Okay, next up for Rider, we are going to have Marie Rider. Marie Rider is still a really good challenge unit. Very tough to kill. She has 3 times invuln, and she definitely has had improvements to her damage output. I think she's still not going to be the best in terms of damage output for you, but she is certainly a serviceable option and very hard to bring down. She could be good for like early on in a lot of accounts, and really just a good anchor of a challenge type of scenario. Next up, we have Martha. Martha, certainly not going to be someone you're going to take necessarily for damage output, though that has been improved. She is a little bit better in that regard. But the real reason a lot of people are going to take Martha is for both cleanse support for the party, as well as the ability to buff strip enemies. So she's a really good setup option. She's really good in scenarios where like you come out of the gate and they're just debuffing you and you need to kind of set your party up for success. Martha Rider can be a really decent option for that type of scenario. Next up, we have the original Yuri Pirates. They are single target quick, and they have at least had buffs that help fix their capability. To me, they could maybe still use a little bit of love, but I think they're overall still in a pretty decent spot. And I think they can be a decent option for you to pick up, but they are permanent ultimately, so the choice is yours. Next up, we have Astolfo here. Astolfo is a 50% charging AoE rider. Definitely a decent option for you guys to pick up if you're looking for somebody in that vein. And certainly damage performance is not the worst. So at the end of the day, if you really like Astolfo, this could be a decent way to get him. But keep in mind that he is a permanent unit. Next up, we have Surfmo. Surfmo is actually going to be one of the just really sneakily good choices to pick up on this 4-star ticket. Not only is she a limited summer unit, but she's also an AoE looping rider. And now, thanks to the buff that JP just gave her at their anniversary, Surfmo's a little bit of a monster. So she actually can hang pretty decently well now with some of the other competitors that she has. Certainly, if you're shoring her up and trying to get additional coins for her, this is a good pick. But even just for a singular copy, Surfmo is an absurdly good looper and refunder and still has 30% charge in her kit. So to me personally, Surfmo is a really solid choice and one of the best riders you guys could pick up here with that in mind. Next up, we have Carmilla Rider. And if we were just extolling the virtues of Surfmo, unfortunately, I feel like with Carmilla Rider, she could definitely use a lot of love. She still has a very clunky challenge-oriented kit. Her damage output is really suspect. I think the devs need to pay a little bit more attention to some of their older, like, summer units at this point, because it's pretty clear that people like these characters, but it feels like there's no point recommending them because they're just so far behind some of the other options. Next up here, we have Murasaki Rider. Now, Murasaki Rider is a single target arts summer rider, so she's limited. She has really good damage performance, really good looping and refund applicability as well. So she's actually, even though she's a debuff centric unit, she has everything in her kit that she needs to be able to succeed with debuffs in this game. And so I do highly recommend her. If you've never used her before, she's a very solid single target rider option, particularly if you don't have some of the other welfares and things like that. Next up here, we have Canis Rider. Canis Rider is another limited single target summer rider, but she is Buster. Unfortunately, Canis Rider doesn't really have anything in the way of charge. She's a very crit-centric and synergistic unit. She can basically provide crit stars for herself. She can soak them, and then she can crit harder with them. She definitely performs well card-wise, but she could really use a buff to just make her a more consistent output option for people that like Canis. Next up here, we have Dobrynya. Dobrynya at least has the party-wide dragon niche. This does have some interesting applicabilities. They did also help out her charge situation a little bit if memory serves. So she could be a decent option for you guys to pick up, especially if you just like cute Russian cat girls. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think she's necessarily the best option to choose here. Again, the choice is yours. And then last, but honestly kind of least in this case, we have Huang Fei Hu. He absolutely is just a kind of forgotten about unit at this point. They really need to give him some kind of upgrade. He also has a tendency to, it feel like, lack identity and really like not have a reason to take him to a node. So to me, the devs really could help themselves out by actually giving him a much needed buff. Next up here, we start the casters. And this is an interesting one because right off the rip, we have Medea Lily. Medea Lily is certainly not in vogue or in meta with the way that she operates. She is a healing support, and that is her primary gimmick. However, for a healing support, while she is not like as consistent as someone like, say, Merlin, she can still spam it out, and her heals are actually pretty decent in terms of their health value compared to maybe some of the other healers that exist in the game. So in that regard, she could be a decent option for you if you just need somebody to heal. However, we also did just get Iris Veil, including Iris Veil's upgrades from the Welfare Evocation Festival. So again, the choice is yours as to whether or not to go after something like this. Next up, we have Nursery Rhyme. The devs have at least gone back and given Nursery Rhyme an update. They have improved her damage output, and it does help things out. But Nursery Rhyme is still going to be a little bit more in the realm of like AoE arts, like challenge scenarios where she can drain enemies, she can deprive them basically of getting to their NP, and she can kind of help be a little bit of a star generator and crit generator for the party there. Next up, we also have Helena Blavatsky. Now, Blavatsky, while she is permanent, is a really decent option for a lot of people to pick up. And the reason why is because not only does she moonlight as a good AoE caster for damage output, she also is a pretty decent 4-star support. She can buff any card type, and she can give the party 20% charge. So that alone is worth its weight in gold. Plus the upgrade to her middle skill, giving her specifically 30% charge, means that she is a 50% charging unit now. So to me, she is one of the better options that you guys could pick from a gameplay perspective if you don't already have her. But she is permanent, so again, the choice is yours. Thomas Edison, by comparison, is a little bit more niche. His damage numbers are certainly not as robust. and his supportive capabilities are interesting. I'm gonna say they have some pretty intriguing implications and applications, but they don't necessarily have to be something that you need. You could absolutely skip over Thomas Edison and be fine. The choice is yours. As a story locked unit, you're not going to get him unless you do specifically devotedly roll for him or pick him on this ticket. So again, that is something worth considering, but it's not something that you necessarily have to have. Next up, we have Nitocris. Nitocris is one of the game's just kind of like best farming options. She actually can manage to death proc enemies fairly consistently. So unlike in a lot of scenarios where death can kind of be a meme for people, Nitocris manages to wield it in an effective way. She also has 100% charge and is an AoE arts caster. So to me, she is definitely a decent option as well for your ticket pick here if you don't have her. Next up, we have Marie Antoinette Caster. She is a limited AoE arts caster from Summer 1, and she is the epitome of a unit that needs an upgrade. Her damage output is pathetic. Her refund numbers aren't stellar. So at the end of the day, the devs really need to give her something, because it is a shame that we have had a unit go this long without a buff. Gilgamesh Caster, on the flip side here, is a lot better. Gilgamesh basically has gotten numerous upgrades over the years and is now not only good as a damage-dealing Black Grail looping AoE arts caster, but also a pretty decent supportive caster in his own right. He's going to rival Helena for that choice, and depending on the centricity of your account, if you're a little bit more skewed towards arts, he might even just straight up be the better choice. So again, the choice is yours, but it really just depends. Cersei is a decent single target option when it comes to casters. We did just recently get the buff to Medea on JP that does at least let her rival Cersei a little bit more, but Cersei will win over even Medea, assuming you basically tend to your Cersei appropriately. Cersei's major claim to fame is going to be the fact that she has a cleanse, she has a charge skill of 100%, and she can turn the enemy into pigs. That is hilarious, and it is a unique application within the game. It basically acts as a unique form of stun. So again, feel free to try her out. She is definitely a decent option here, but she is permanent as well. Unfortunately, my girl Midrash, aka Queen of Sheba, could use a whole lot of love. Basically, the upgrade to Medea at this point on JP has left Queen of Sheba in a ditch dead somewhere face down. So that is not good. She's another unit that just desperately could use an upgrade. And again, we'll see what the devs do with her at some point in the future. She at least has had a charge skill given to her, but she definitely could use more. Miyu is another interesting supportive option. She's really good at sustain and kind of like keeping the composition going. Also just stacking a bunch of attack buffs for the party, and doubly so if you're using her alongside the other Prillia cast members. So again, the choice is yours as to whether or not to go for her. She can be a decent option as somebody who is, again, I believe she's limited in that regard. Charlotte Corday Caster is a single target arts limited caster, and she would be the better option to pick here if you desperately need a single target. The reason why is because she has a 60% charge that she can split up into increments of 30%, either 30% on herself and 30% on someone else, or all 60% to herself. So that does make her a flexible option. She also deals super effective damage to units that she can land her skill seal effect on. She can be a really, really decent and serviceable option as a single target caster. Daiko Kuten, aka the Rats, are basically going to be an AoE Black Grail looping quick caster. They're actually one of the game's first quick casters in that regard, and it does make them an interesting option. They actually have just about everything they need to succeed and bring at least some of the deficiencies of the Scotty comps kind of with them in their own kit to help address that. So they are a very, very decent option as an AoE looping caster, but it is going to be predicated a little bit on having Scotty, or at least having some ability to maybe do multiple damage dealer setup. Woo Caster is another limited summer unit. Honestly, probably not my go-to, though she can apply undead to anything. So if you have people that can exploit undead, Woo can have a pretty interesting niche use. And in that regard, I do think she could be a decent option damage-wise and charge-wise, but I'm going to say at the end of the day, probably not going to be my pick here. Next up, we move on to the assassins, and we start off first with a rare prison. I'm just kidding. We start off first with Sethino. A lot of people write Sethino off because they assume that Sethino is just garbage and cannot be used effectively. Sethino can actually death proc enemies with her NP, and this can be used assuming you know how death proc works. And she is also a pretty decent option for charm locking enemies if the game allows for it, as well as buffing divine allies. There are a lot of units in the game that are divine. Sometimes Sethino makes sense in a similar way to Sadistic Charisma for Liz Lancer. Sethino can also be a decent option for you guys in that regard. Next up, we have Carmilla Assassin. This version is a lot better, thankfully. She is one of the few units in the game that is anti-female. Basically, her and Jack the Ripper are the only ones within the assassin class, and she at least is a vampire in this regard, so she can drain her enemies of charge and charge herself, though admittedly they really do need to go back and fix a bunch of the vampirisms in the game because it doesn't give a actual round number of 30% charge like we would hope. So that is definitely one of the issues with her. But again, she could be a very decent option for a single target assassin. Next up, we have Emiya Assassin. Emiya Assassin is somebody that has a unique change to his refund numbers because the hit counts on his Noble Phantasm are so high. He definitely has had a nice buff that has helped facilitate that refund, because I think the devs realized that the way that they originally designed him was not good, which is that they designed him to have his scapegoat ability, aka his targetable taunt, to be put on himself to get him hit, because he basically has a higher NP gain off of getting hit. And so that was their idea, is that this will help resolve his NP gain issues, but naturally with the way the game has evolved over the years, that is just a terrible way of generating Noble Phantasm. So the devs have finally given him an upgrade that really helps him out in that regard, so he could be a decent option for you guys to pick up into the future, but right now he will be a little bit podunk if you pick him up right here. Yun King has definitely gotten a lot of upgrades over the years, and it has helped out his identity as somebody that can maneuver and manipulate stars in a party. This can be used to his advantage. This can absolutely allow him to pop off, but ultimately I don't feel like Yun King is one of the strongest options here, and he's probably not going to be who I recommend you guys pick. Next up, we have Woo, and Woo is basically going to be a really decent single target quick assassin. Woo is the better option to pick. Woo has gotten so much love in terms of upgrades over the years that she now is a pretty decent quick support. She still has a targetable charge skill as well, even though it's only 10%. So I do feel like Woo is at least a really decent option if you're looking for a single target damage dealer from this group. Next up, we have Ninokris Assassin. This is a limited summer version. She's AoE arts, and thankfully they at least gave her an NP interlude on JP that fixed the issue with her death proc. It used to happen before her damage went out, which would screw her refund over. Now it happens after, so she's in a little bit of a better spot, but she could still probably use more upgrades. Do understand if you take her and you pick her up, she's going to be almost similar to Passion Lip in the way that she operates as a tank. She's not necessarily going to be known for her damage output, so that is definitely going to be something to consider with her. Next up here, we have Chiome. Chiome is actually a pretty decent single target option in and of her own right. If you're looking for somebody that's more art-centric as opposed to Woo's quick centricity, Chiome can be definitely an interesting one to go with. Especially now that Chiome does have things like charge and the ability to curse her foes. She could definitely be a very serviceable single target assassin for a lot of people out there. Next up, we have Kato Danzo. Kato Danzo is a story-locked option here. Kato Danzo's not really known for her damage output. She's AoE buster, and she is anti-demonic. There is that. But ultimately, the big thing that she's known for is her ability to target people with her second and third skill, which includes a targetable dodge and a targetable invincibility that can be used to at least apply for some challenge scenarios to help the party out. Next up, we have Ushiwakamaru Assassin. This is an AoE quick version of her. She is a limited summer unit, and she definitely has some interesting loop ability. She has 40% charge in her kit and pretty decent refund. The issue at play is her damage output is not the best. Next up, we have Consort U. Consort U finally got some upgrades that allowed her kit to not be one of the worst things in the game. And so as a result, she's much more serviceable and usable now, but the damage output is still atrocious. So just keep that in mind. She's the epitome of a trophy waifu. She is basically story locked in nature, so feel free to go after her if you want the coins, but they definitely need to give this girl another upgrade. And last but not least, we have Okita J Soji. This is another limited AoE quick summer assassin, and she is actually a Black Grail looping assassin in her own right. The issue at play is she has a ton of demerits and can stun herself after her NP, which doesn't mean that she can't loop still, but it does mean you need to watch out if you're going to be trying to card with her after her Noble Phantasm goes out. Next up, we start the Berserkers here, and there's everybody's favorite, Hercules. Hercules is the game's quintessential cockroach character. He is just nigh impossible to kill, and with some of the changes that we know are happening in the realm of things like grand fights and stuff like that coming up in the future, having a Hercules is probably going to be a really good idea, especially if you've managed to get him Bond 10 to unlock his Bond C. So Hercules is a permanent option. He's somebody that you can get at the very beginning of the game. This definitely means that a lot of you guys will already have him, so you won't necessarily feel the need to get more of him, though he is a really, really good Berserker in his own right. Again, the choice is yours as to whether or not to go after him. Lancelot Berserker is a little bit past his prime. He's still a pretty decent and serviceable AoE looping quick Berserker, but the issue at play is he doesn't really have charge, and a lot of the skill durations in his kit are only one turn. So you have to be very picky about how you use him and in what type of node, but otherwise he is a really, really solid option, and he does get stronger every time he loops. Tamamo Cat, they've at least fixed the ability for her to put herself to sleep as much, so this does make her a lot more viable. She's definitely come a long way from where she used to be, but still not necessarily going to be your go-to like looper. Not going to necessarily be the one that you're going to want to pick here, but if you're a huge Tamamo fan, feel free to go for it. Fran Berserker, also ironically enough in the same vein, is a quick AoE looping Berserker. And yes, I just said AoE looping because a lot of people would assume that you can't loop Fran because she can stun herself with her NP. But there are ways that you guys actually can get around that, including using units like Nightingale. Again, anybody that can basically provide a debuff immunity to Fran can actually allow Fran to pop off and do pretty decent numbers. But it's a very similar scenario to Lancelot Berserker, where basically you don't really have any sort of charge. So you're gonna have to be very careful about how you utilize someone like Fran. Still, as far as AoE damage goes, Fran's damage is not bad. It's actually one of the main reasons to pull for her. Beowulf is single target buster. He's kind of anti-dragon. He does have a very good crit skill that he stole from Lalter, but that's pretty much where his viability ends. He doesn't really have charge. He can be, again, somebody that hits really, really hard and can card really, really hard after the fact, but again, you got to be able to get him to that Noble Phantasm in the first place. Next up is Ibaraki Doji Berserker. This is another one very similar a little bit to her Lancer form, which kind of at this point is just lacking a little bit of real identity. She doesn't really have hard survivability. I think they actually need to buff Ibaraki Doji because at this point she's pretty much just kind of like faded from existence in the game. and it's not a good thing. Penth is a really interesting single target buster Berserker. Basically, Penth has charge per turn up to 20% that allows her to automate a whole bunch of charge. And she also has supportive characteristics with both her party-wide charisma as well as party-wide buster up, and definitely has the anti-Greek male niche for an extra 100% power mod. So Penth could be a really decent high-octane Berserker. Her biggest issue is her survivability. Oda Nobunaga Berserker is very similar to Penth in that regard. The concern is survivability, not damage output. In fact, Oda Berserker basically is going to be your divine killer. She's absolutely fantastic in that niche and can definitely do solid work for you. Next up, we have Atalanta Alter. She is single target quick. Again, another interesting option where she is primarily refund based like her main form. She doesn't really have any charge. That is her primary concern, but she does at least have a little bit of survivability baked in. So it's kind of a buyer beware type of scenario. She's not going to be the most fluid unit. Next up is Kijo Koyo. Frankly speaking, Kijo Koyo also doesn't really have a big reason to actually use her. A lot of the reason people will like to use her is simply for the novelty of her. They may just really like the character, but ultimately, other than her being literally a dinosaur, there is no reason for you to actually necessarily get her. Brynhildr Berserker is another interesting AoE option for your Berserker. She can also automate some of her charge, similar to kind of how like Penth did, but she does have the Brynhildr's Beloved niche, which means that she can actually buff allies in the party that fall under the Brynhildr's Beloved niche. It does give her some, again, niche applications, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's not anything you have to have. So if you just really like her design, feel free to go for it, but it is what it is. Next up, we have Sei Shonagon Berserker. She's another single target limited quick Berserker, but she ironically enough has a triple buster gorilla deck. She's actually a really decent crit option, but otherwise damage performance and refund leave a lot to be desired for this unit. So to me, she's not who I necessarily recommend people pick up. Now, Brynhild here, however, is a story locked unit and is a single target arts-based Berserker with 50% charge, and again, anti-dragon niche really to boot. So I do really like Kriemhild. I feel like she can be a decent option for you guys, and definitely a good option to pick up here due to both the story locked nature and rarity there, as well as due to the ability of her kind of being a 50% charging 4-star. Next up, we move on to the extra classes here, as we've got 2 rulers, starting off with Martha Ruler. Martha Ruler could probably use another upgrade at this point in time. Her damage is not really to be denied, but still she has managed to be outpaced by other options, including the other ruler currently available here in this ticket. So that ends up being a little bit of an issue. Her charge is okay, and as a buster synergistic unit, you can still get a whole lot done with her. If you really like her, feel free to go for her. Her primary claim to fame is basically her anti-demon, anti-undead Jacob's Limbs, basically power mod of 100% that really allows her to pop off. Next up, we have Estrella. Estrella is just a single target arts looping ruler that hits like a Mack truck, has extremely synergistic skills, and basically is anti-evil to boot. So this is one of the reasons that a lot of people go with Estrella. She's absolutely phenomenal to pick up here and a really good choice with the ticket, even though she is permanent. Moving on to the Avengers, we have Gorgon. Gorgon is in a much better spot, but to me, probably not someone I'm necessarily going to recommend unless you just really feel like you need an AoE Avenger. Hessian Lobo would be a decent option normally here. However, the inclusion of limited units means I'm not going to tell anybody to pick him. And the reason why is going to be because Utsumi Eris is here. She is single target arts and anti-servant power mod with her kit. This does make her a pretty decent looper and somebody that hits really hard. This should be your go-to Avenger if you need one on this ticket. For Alter Ego, our only option is Passion Lip. Passion Lip is somebody that has a whole lot going on in her kit, and she has gotten a lot of upgrades. Her damage is actually pretty darn decent. She is a tank, so she's very difficult to bring down, and she does even have death memes on one of her skills to allow her to card enemies to death. Plus, her Noble Phantasm, on top of dealing damage to all enemies as a Buster AoE, also heals the party, so it's definitely another interesting inclusion in her kit. For foreigners, all we have is Double X, but Double X is certainly a very serviceable single target arts foreigner. The biggest issue is her second skill, which has just negative star absorption, so naturally you want the arts unit to absorb stars, not give them away. I hope the devs eventually address that, but there is lore implications for it. But still, damage output for this unit is very solid, and she does have anti-threat to humanity, so she definitely pairs up really well and really synergistically with Castoria. And then lastly on this ticket, we have 4-star Pretender Hephaestion, who has 100% charge in her kit. And really, we don't have to say too much more beyond that. She is just a decent option if you need a Pretender. She definitely can have a little bit of an expansion of typical Pretender duties, as she is effective against more classes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're picking up Hephaestion, you know why, and it's probably because of the 100% charge skill. So again, with her being single target arts, she is a decent option as a boss killing Pretender. So that is going to be your 4-star ticket overall. To me, some of the best choices are going to be units like Salter, basically from the Sabers. I personally really like the idea of Zenobia from the Archers, though there's definitely single targets there if you want to go after someone like Balbon Sith. And you also have Lancers. I think Lalter and Percival are really decent options, as well as Mama Raiko Lancer, and then maybe even a little bit of a dark horse in Don Quixote. Rider options, I think Surfmo and Murasaki Rider are just really too good to ignore, unless you just really feel like you need the utility of someone like Martha, or you just really like another character. Casters, I think your go-to is going to be Helena and Gilgamesh, and then Nitocris as well there. If you need a single target, probably someone like Charlotte Corday. For assassins, I think your best bets here are probably going to be Wu, Chiome in the short term, and probably at that point, like Carmilla as well, if you're just looking for somebody that's like Buster based. AoE options here, there's not a whole lot of stellar ones. I could advise you to take up like Ushiwakamaru just due to general usability, but the choice is yours. For Berserkers, obviously Herc is somebody worthy of your attention, but I think at the end of the day, I think Kriemhild is way too good to pass up. And from there, if you're looking at AoE, your options are less than stellar for this group. And then the extra classes, I do think Estrella makes a whole lot of sense for Ruler. Eris makes a whole lot of sense for Avenger. Double X, really, the extra classes are all pretty darn decent here, and the choice is yours. So again, who are you guys going to pick from the 4-star ticket? Will you be celebrating 3,000 days when the 3,000 days comes to the game? And again, I will see you guys for the next one. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to go give my voice a rest. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't already, check me out on YouTube, join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, and I will see you guys for the next one, and have a good one. Pick carefully. You're not going to get another shot at this. I highly recommend, if you're somebody that just needs coins to fix something, that you guys consider that, if it allows you to not have to roll. So view the ticket from a standpoint of what will save you guys the most money or quartz.